So hey, um, it's been a while since I've done a kind of like camera focused video. I normally have done it with my microphone and everything, and I just also haven't been posting a lot recently. So you're probably not used to seeing me on screen with you guys, and I don't know. I don't even tell, but I look a little bit different. You know what I mean? I still got the same setup going on. I kind of want to like switch things up a little bit. I think I'm going to start having like maybe some action figures in the background or something, because I have some pretty cool stuff here. So hopefully next time I can improve my setup for you guys so it looks nicer. But yeah, no, I'm going to be talking about all the horror movies I watched in September. And I know you're probably wondering, well, why are you talking about horror movies they watched in September? What about October? I always feel like, I'm going to be honest, horror is probably my favorite genre. I absolutely adore horror movies. So what I thought about doing is I want to do the horror movies I watched in September and October. And I'm thinking maybe November, because let's be real here. What am I going to watch in November? You know what I'm saying? And then in December, I'll start actually watching movies that came out this year. And then I'll make a whole video about that. I kind of want to do this, like, I want to make a video like once every 2 weeks. Maybe once every 1 week, but that gets kind of hard because I'm a little busy. Or I could do like one every month, but that's like just seems like too little. But anyways, I'm gonna try to post videos with a more consistent schedule. I'm hoping to get some better editing software, because I'm gonna be getting a PC soon, or at least I'm hoping to get a PC soon because I have money saved up for it. So I'm gonna be getting that, and I'll get a better editing software and everything for you guys, get some nicer equipment so that I can make better content. Because I feel like in the last year or two, when I had been posting videos, I never improved my quality. I felt like my videos were just kind of the same thing. They didn't really actually improve at all. So I thought, it's time to actually up my content up if I want to keep doing this, or I should just quit. So I'm sorry, that was a whole introduction. I just feel like I haven't actually talked about anything like in a while beyond the stuff that was in the video. So I just wanted to get all that out of the way. Anyways, let's talk about the horror movies that I watched this September. First film that we got up that I want to talk about is this film called Audition. And it's such an interesting movie to me because you never really know what's going to happen. Like, it's very nuanced and very interesting to me in a lot of ways because of how experimental and atmospheric it gets. It reminds me a little bit of Eraserhead, but not really, because there's a very more distinct plot that we're here to follow. Like, it's clearly trying to show us the traumatic events of this woman and how it built her up to be the person that she is. And it kind of takes this very interesting commentary, sort of like, I guess, sexism and abuse of women that happens in Japan, and how they are treated, and how incredibly misogynistic the atmosphere is, and sort of like, in a way, I guess, kind of an exaggerated, way that somebody could, like, turn out. But it kind of makes sense in a way. Like, as much as you, like, obviously disagree with who she is and, like, how she does things, I mean, it's very obvious why she became this way. Like, that little scene where she's talking about how men are all the same and how disgusting this guy is, and just like how that affects and ties into how she feels about like her personal abuses and personal trauma. It all makes like perfect sense when you really understand it, because if you're someone that's abused by men and the only men that you've ever known your entire life are these terribly horrible people, of course you're going to associate all men as kind of the same. And the sad reality is that our character, our lead, while he's obviously not as bad as these other men that have, that abused her, he's still not a good person. Like, the whole reason they start the whole audition thing is literally so he could find a woman, which I guess isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely a pretty kind of gross thing to do, in my opinion. So he's not like a guy you think is like this perfect angel or whatever, but obviously you don't think he deserves the sort of torture methods that she places upon him. So it's a very interesting film in that regard. The editing is great, the music is well done. It's just, takes its concept, and at first you don't think it's gonna be a lot, but then you get into the second half and it just becomes like this almost a whole different movie, like how I mentioned before. Like it's very linear at the beginning, and then it becomes very weird and experimental, and the visuals and the imagery just becomes something like entirely different. It's an overall just fantastic movie that sort of commentates on abuse of women and that country specifically in general, and sort of like how someone could become what we see of her at the very end of the movie. So overall, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's not like a full-on horror movie, but like it is a horror movie at the same time. So it overall, it's just a great movie. You should go check it out. There's a lot of like horror classics that I didn't really see when I was younger that I've been meaning to get into. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, I didn't see until like 2 years ago. Halloween, I think was like the same. It was like about a couple years ago I watched it. And then Friday the 13th, like I think I saw like a year ago. Like all these like really like horror classic movies from the 80s and the 70s that are like, you know, that are like rated R or whatever. I never watched them when I was younger, so I'm kind of like going back to them and watching them now as an adult. And Hellraiser was one that I was kind of disappointed by. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty good. I still like it. I think the special effects are just so well done. I think the way that they're able to have these creatures come to life and this just like very grotesque violence. It's very 80s like when like they had practical effects. But once again, any kind of 80s practical effects looks way better than like 95% of CGI today. So it overall just fits really nicely. And I do think the concept is very interesting with this like lady luring men in. It causes a very tense environment and atmosphere. So I do really like it. However, I just expected more. I expected a film that like was really gonna just absolutely like knock me the fuck away. But this movie just doesn't do that for me. It doesn't like it doesn't surprise me in any way. Like, it's good. It's a solid, like, 8. It's a really solid 8. But when you compare it to these other, like, masterpieces, like Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, these absolute, like, classics, it's really surprising to me that it got the praise that it did because, I mean, it doesn't stand out that much compared to other movies. It's still good. It's still solid. But when it comes down to it, it's not, like, an amazing, well-renowned masterpiece, in my opinion. Color Out of Space is a movie that I just really don't understand why people loved it so much, especially, like, compared to other movies that came out that year. That was a really good year for movies, and for some reason this one gained, like, quite a bit of traction. I understand a lot of it was probably because Nicolas Cage was in it, so I guess that makes, like, perfect sense. But when it really comes down to it, I don't really see, like, anything that I like really like about the movie. Like for me it's a like slightly below average film, and that's really disappointing because I like the idea of cosmic horror. I think the idea of cosmic horror is really fascinating and interesting to me, but this movie just falls flat. A lot of the movie focuses on the family, and even though Nicolas Cage is in it, it's just like he's not that interesting, and neither are any of the other actors. And the writing and the family dynamic that they chose for them is just so just boring and just so like not fascinating to me at all. With the way they talk to each other, the way they communicate, it's so like standard. Like you have the girl that's like, you know, causing like or the troubled girl or whatever that's, you know, getting mad at the family. And then you have like the standard like small town kind of couple, like dad going on who I guess had some issues with his dad or something, I don't know. And then you have the older brother who kind of nags on the sister a little bit. It's like it's just such a standard dynamic, and there's nothing different or interesting about it, to where I'm just like I don't really care at all about anything that's going on. I don't care about the family, I don't care if they live or die. And because there's that lack of connection that really is supposed to bring you in, there's just no reason to really watch the movie because it's just all so bland and generic to me. And then you get to the cosmic horror elements, which is when I was hoping the movie was actually gonna get good, and it doesn't, because it's just a bunch of random shit that happens. Like, sure, some of the effects are like kind of cool, But it's like, it's a bunch of random shit. There's no real explanation for any of it besides the fact that it's a meteorite. And it's not even just the fact that there's a lack of an explanation. It's the fact there's a lack of meaning to really anything that goes on in this film. It's just a bunch of bullshit, and it doesn't make any sense, and I don't care. And Eraserhead is a movie where, like, stuff does happen, but there's, like, that you kind of, it's hard to understand. But there's at least, like, a mystery behind it as to what it is. You know, there's, like, you can make your own, like, sort of argument and sort of explanation for why you think stuff is happening. With Color Out of Space, shit just happens. And you kind of just gotta accept that it just happens. You just gotta be like, oh, whatever. So it just was really not a very good movie to me. It also started to drag at the end. I just was wanting it to be over, probably because I just, once again, didn't really like it. Didn't really enjoy it, and it was kind of disappointing because it was a movie that gained a lot of traction in a year that had a lot of good films. This Chainsaw Massacre remake was something I was very interested in because I know people that don't really like the original movie that really like this one. So I was curious if I was going to hate it because of that, or if I was going to like that it had a different take, because I absolutely love the original. I think the original is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. So I was definitely pleasantly surprised. Now, is this movie as good as the original? It's not even close. Not even, like, in the same ballpark, like, at all. It's not even a competition. But it's a pretty good remake, and I think it does stuff differently, and I appreciate it for that. It takes the opposite approach, where Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the whole appeal of the movie is you're kind of shown the sort of violence, but it's more of like, it leaves it up to your imagination, the sort of grotesque nature of it, which in a way makes it feel more disturbing. This movie does the absolute opposite approach and shows you the most absolute brutal ways that people are dying, and just it lets you watch it and sink all of this violence in. Now, a lot of movies have done this, but I think this one does a solid job at just having, like, absolutely grotesque carnage candy that is very entertaining and interesting to watch. I think another thing that really carries the movie is the cast for this whole Sawyer family. I think they're all very well at acting like absolute creeps and just very off-putting and weird. And I think that's what you need in a movie like this, is you need people that act very creepy, act very weird, and make our main characters uncomfortable. Whether you have the sheriff, whether you have, the mom that I think killed that family and then took their baby. Just, like, people like that are able to make the movie, feel weird. Make it feel uncomfortable. Make you feel like, you're just, like, absolutely just horrified by what these people are doing. And this cast really kind of brings that out. Now, there's also the main cast of characters that we follow, and they're okay. They're all right. They don't do anything amazing or great, but they're not, like, the worst ever. I also find the movie just very entertaining in general. I think it's a movie that is, like it's very fast-paced once you get into the absolute schlock of it, and it doesn't slow down. And I think you need a movie like that with this, where it's like, if you're going to show all this just visceral violence, it should be very fast-paced and entertaining while you're watching it. And I think the movie does a great job at doing that. However, the only problem I really have with this movie is the main characters are idiots. Like, they do so much stupid stuff. And I know people in horror movies do stupid stuff, but, like, they do really stupid stuff. Like, I understand that they had to give the body to the sheriff. I don't care what you tell me what to do. I am not putting a dead body in my car and driving it around town. I'm not doing that. That is a very dumb thing to do. They also, when they did get there, they should have just left it there at that point, because, like, the guy said he wasn't coming, and they were just waiting there for, like, a very long time. So that was also just really dumb and really stupid to me. It's just decisions like that. Like, they could have easily avoided it if they, first of all, just didn't pick up the hitchhiker. If they just decide, yeah, no, we're not going to do that, this whole situation would have been avoided in the first place. Because who really picks up hitchhikers, okay? Who is that stupid? Who is that much of a moron to pick up a hitchhiker? I know it was back then, but that's not an excuse. Overall, it is a pretty good movie, but I feel like the main cast of characters kind of, like, holds it back. Also, their acting like kind of sucks from certain one of them. Some of them are just very poorly written and very uninteresting. So that also is something that I'm not very fond of. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of good things about it that help, perpetuate the movie to a higher rating. Tetsuo the Iron Man is kind of one of those experimental movies that I feel like you gotta watch once or twice to really, first of all, understand what the hell is going on, and second of all, to really formulate an opinion on this movie. Because when I first watched it, I didn't know if it was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, or an absolute dog shit abomination that has an amateur cast, amateur filmmaking, and people that didn't know what the hell they were doing. But when I watched it the second time, I finally understood that this is really an amazing movie. This is really an interesting work of art to me. And I think the sort of like the editing style is so interesting and great to me because it's all over the place. Like it shouldn't work, but it does. That's the thing. Is like the third act is literally just like these guys like moving with footage sped up, fighting each other. And it sounds stupid, and you think it would look stupid, but it actually is really awesome and entertaining to watch as these people, like these like cyborg mechs, are just like fighting each other in this like high-speed footage. And it sounds weird, but it absolutely does work perfectly. I think the body horror in this movie is one of the best parts of it. Like with the dude that's like pulling out his shin and then taking one of like, I think this one of those metal parts and just shoving it in there. Or that one scene where the dude's pelvis area turns into a drill. It's like certain stuff like that where it's just like very visceral, very violent body horror. But it just is so uncomfortable and so interesting to watch. Like, they're very creative with the way they're able to pull off the body horror in this movie, and I think that is more impressive than anything you'd be able to find in, like, any sort of CGI schlock mess that you'd see nowadays. So I think that is something that should be appreciated. And it also, with all of that, is able to tell a story that they don't directly tell you what's going on, and you just kind of got to rewatch it to sort of pinpoint what the hell is happening in the movie. But I think that makes it like better because then you're rewatching it more. You're trying to pick out certain pieces and pinpoints of what is this supposed to mean? What does this do for the story? And I think that's just a very really good way to make a movie, is to have a bunch of stuff like in there that people can pick apart, because then it gives a reason why you want to go back to it beyond just the fact that you really like and enjoy the movie. So I think that's just also really good. The visuals in general are just great. They really help to bring out this odd environment that I have just never seen before. The special effects really help to make the body horror just look so much better as they, just make these like very interesting structures for these sort of like these cyborgs that we see on screen. It's all just so fascinating to me, and I love how it's all portrayed and how they show everything. It's a movie that is, I know I'm doing a bad job at explaining why it's so good, but I feel like it's one of those films where you can't really explain it and you kind of just have to watch it because it's so out there and so different from anything that I've ever seen that it feels like I'm almost not doing it justice trying to talk about it. Phantom of the Paradise is a pretty good movie that I think really shows the sort of exploitation of the music industry, as we have our main character who is just not like very appealing, I guess, not very stylistic, but he has incredible talent, and we see this in our villain who utilizes his work, takes his work and just claims it as his own. And the sad reality is that this is something that does happen in the music industry, and I think this movie was very ahead of its time for talking about it, is the exploitation of certain people and how they get used. And our main character is a perfect example of someone who becomes damaged, who becomes this like terrorist in a way. Obviously, this is an exaggerated way of how someone would react in this situation, but it shows the sort of like deep-rooted and soul-sucking nature that we see in, the music industry as a whole. And I love how it's able to sort of just demonstrate it for us, just show us, like, this is unfortunately a very likely scenario that happened, if you're someone that has talent, but you don't have the sort of like stardom appeal or the facial appeal, they will use you. They will exploit you for the work that you have. And they see him almost as a slave, as a tool that they can use to better their own game. And I think that's just great. And we see our villain as he's someone who, is very much like fixated on his looks and his appearance, and sort of, consumes and just like benefits in a way off of his, his like hunger for money, and his like this sort of like very stylistic, aesthetic kind of, industry that he's in, as he like literally makes a deal to make himself never look young, to sort of appeal to these people. And his desperate like seeks for approval are just falling into this like really like unnecessary standard that they have for these artists, these stars. And I think it's such an interesting movie. And like on just a front point level, when you really like just look at the movie for what it is, you're not going to notice this stuff. But when you look at the movie and you really think about it, a lot of these themes and ideas are there, and they make to give and present a really well-made film. Longlegs is a movie that I didn't expect to have a lot to say about, because I feel like I have a lot to say about it, but I also have like nothing to say about it at all the more I think about it. Because it's a movie where like it's so interesting to me, and yet it's so hard, I feel like, to really explain and articulate my thoughts, but I'm gonna do it in the best way that I possibly can. And I just think that just the beginning and the first like hour and 15 minutes of this movie are so well done and so interesting to me. And I love how it like plays as this sort of like detective kind of film, and how like we slowly learn bits and pieces of information throughout it, and the tension that it provides, and the sort of connection that we have to our lead as their tie into the main villain, the bad guy, if you will. However, I don't know how to feel about the ending. That's the main thing. That's why I feel like it's hard for me to praise the movie, because like the ending is so odd to me. I don't know if I love it or if I absolutely despise it, because on one hand, it's an interesting twist. You don't see it coming. But also, I feel like I have more dislike for the ending because of the fact that it takes away all of the sort of like, natural aspects and who the real main villain is. But it's also such a good twist to where I can't say that I don't like it. Like, you don't see it coming, but you also don't see it coming because there's no rules established that this could actually happen. Like, there's no rules established that this could even be a possibility. So, of course, you're not going to see it coming at the end of the day. Like, obviously, you're not going to think, oh, this is a movie that's very realistic, that is very grounded in reality. Of course, you're not going to think that, oh, like, Satan's going to be involved in it. Spoilers. I'll put a spoiler warning before this. But it's like, I like almost the rest of the movie. I just think that ending is dumb in the sense that, like I said before, it has no connection with the rest of the movie. That ending could like be taken out, and I mean, you wouldn't really notice it because it hardly connects to the rest of the film. There's really no hints at it being like an important part of the film. So it's just kind of something that just feels kind of like horseshoe kind of thrown in there. But the rest of the movie is really good. Like, it's really tension filled. It's got a really good atmosphere. I like our main lead, and I think that the way they show them slowly trying to figure out everything that's going on is really good. But that in particular is something that I just don't like, is, the last like 15 to 20 minutes. Heck, is a movie I don't hear a lot of people talk about. Like, I know people like it, but when it comes to zombie movies, it's probably my favorite. I love it so much. I think that the way they're able to show these people is so realistic. The acting for them just feels like actual people. The writing makes perfect sense. And just like at the beginning, when you see these news reporters, they seem like they're acting normal. They're not overacting and they're not underacting, right? It just feels like actual footage. And I feel like that's the best kind of found footage movies, is where There's no sort of like Hollywood ways in which they act like dramatic, or they put on this presence that, while it can be good acting, also makes it feel less real. With this movie, all you get is these raw actors that absolutely they just kill it, and they really make you believe that an outbreak actually just happened because of that. They also act in these like scenarios and like these ways that you think people would act. Like, they don't act too ridiculously smart, but they also don't act like complete morons, which you unfortunately see a lot in horror movies, is they just make the dumbest decisions ever. But in this movie, it's a good balance where it's not like, oh, they know exactly what they're doing, this feels so unrealistic, or that they're just complete morons and they just can't do anything right. So I think that is really what makes and holds this movie to such a really interesting way to me, with the way it's just handled in general. I also absolutely love how, like, the logic to sort of how we end up in this situation. Oh, why are they trapped? Oh, it's because the police had to quarantine them in there because they found out that there's a virus in there and they can't let the virus get out. And the way that everyone reacts to that situation is like, people are panicked, people are scared, some people are trying to like act logical, and some people just are absolutely fucking furious at what's going on because they're trapped here. And of course there's people trying to tell them to turn the cameras off, and the reason why they have the camera on makes perfect sense, because like they're news reporters, and they want to show what's going on, and because they feel as if it's needed to be shown, especially since like these people, like, they believe what they're doing is really messed up. And it also just makes sense to kind of give like video proof of what's going on, whether it could be something that could be handled in court later. It just all makes perfect sense how everything is set up. And I think that's something a lot of movies struggle to do, is to sort of like really perfectly set up every little thing. And even when you get to the ending, it's such a good ending. Like, everything about this movie is great. And I didn't talk about it as much as some of these other films that I really love, but it's because, I mean, it just does everything right, to where, like, there's nothing, like, I'd say that's wrong with it. Everything is just really, really good. Super 8 is one of those movies, like the rest of J.J. Abrams' filmography, that makes you question, like, how the hell did this guy get famous? Because I get it, his movies are pretty entertaining and fun, so I can kind of see the appeal. But it's like, when you really, like, break his films down, there's really nothing that they're trying to say. The cinematography is, like, mediocre at best. And the writing between the dynamics and the characters is not all that interesting. And I hate the stupid BS argument that people make, like, oh, this movie was, like, the reason why Stranger Things and It, like, were a thing. And while I understand, it did inspire them. That movie, I'm gonna be honest, I'm, like, 95% sure that movie was inspired by Stand By Me. Like, they just made, like, a PG-13 version with less nuanced characters and less entertaining dynamics. Like, they kind of bicker and they kind of argue, but there's no real depth to them, like there is in, like, Stand By Me, where they have interesting personality traits and they have stuff about them as characters that actually makes them interesting. In Super 8, you don't get that, because there's these three main leads, and it's a love triangle. So immediately you know it's gonna suck, because it's like, oh, like, we just find out of the blue that the best friend loves this girl, even though it's literally not been hinted at whatsoever throughout the entire movie. And we see the main character and the girl, like, having these awkward, like, moments that I guess, like, kind of make sense, but it's like, I don't care, because they're not interesting at all. And they try to make you care when it's, like, this whole, like, stupid thing where, oh, the reason why your mom died is because this dude called off work, and she ended up going to work instead. Which is stupid. It's a stupid reason to hate somebody, and I understand it's grief, but that is so just unintelligent and dumb for that to be the reason why their parents don't like each other. It doesn't make any, like, sense. And like I said before, they're all boring. And then the side characters have literally nothing. Like, they hardly have any screen time. I don't know any of their names. I hardly know the main characters' names. Like the side characters, like, you got, like, the one kid, I guess, that sets off firecrackers, and that's all I remember. And I watched this movie, like, 2 weeks ago, mind you. These characters are just so utterly forgettable. Like, it's, like, people, like, compare it to Stranger Things and It. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's nothing like that. Those movies are actually good, and you actually like the characters because they have actual personality, and the writing for them is actually interesting because, like, they get screen time to sort of show how they are as people instead of just like sort of like entertainment or just people that are in the background while we have this bullshit love triangle going on. So just, and I understand, oh, it's a shorter movie. He could have made it longer. He could have made it longer. If he really wanted to, if he really cared about the movie he was making, he could have written these characters and made it longer. And like that, I would have been more appreciative. If this was a 2.5 hour movie and these characters actually interacted with each other and had interesting stuff going on, I would like that way more than if it's just like an 1.5 hour to 100 hour-minute movie in which they're hardly doing anything. It's just not that good. And I don't want to sound like I despise the movie, because I don't. I think it's just an okay film. But there's just nothing that great about it. It's just a movie that it's just kind of there. It's just okay. Like a lot of J.J. Abrams' filmography, it's just okay. This is a really great movie that I have almost nothing to say about. And I know that sounds like I have like a couple things I want to say about it, which is the stop motion is amazing. I love the stop motion. I think it's very beautiful. I think it is very well done. And I think especially for the time it was made in, it's so impressive. I love the storytelling. I love how they're able to tell like such a coherent and obvious story without having like any sort of words going on. There's sort of like no talking. So I think that's very interesting. But besides that, like there's not much to say. It's got really good visuals. I think some of the characters are pretty interesting, and I love the storytelling. I think that's all I really have to say. The 60s was an interesting time for horror movies, and I think Black Sunday is one of the best horror films to come out of that decade, and is very overlooked in my opinion. The cinematography is like so amazing. It's one of like my favorite depictions of like gothic horror with like just the scenery and everything, because it like looks like it just came straight out of Transylvania with just the aesthetic of it, the way they're able to shoot it. It's just all so like, it's pretty, but it's also so like hollow and dark and demented in a way that just fits like the tone of the film so perfectly well, and just complements this sort of like horrific atmosphere that they are trying to go through in a way that I just really love very much. And then there's the main leads that I think have this pretty interesting tragic like dynamic that I think works quite well, as you have these people that like you might have loved each other, might have not, and the sad reality is that we're almost never fully gonna know, because she just has these fears of like just everything that's going on around her, and like so much death and despair is just being caused left and right, and she just doesn't know what to do. And then you have these characters that have this clear romance with each other, and you don't know whether they're going to make it or not. You don't know whether they're going to survive. And it's just really interesting to just watch it play out. And I know I'm not doing the best job at explaining it, but it really is just a great dynamic that they have, especially with her as an actress. She does like a really, really good job at just acting, like sort of like commentating on mental health in a way, as someone who is just so sick and tired of grief going on in the world and feels as if the world is hopeless. And I feel like we all feel that a lot here and there. But it's a movie that has fantastic visuals, some great scenery, a good atmosphere, and also some very well-written characters. And I know for my high rating, I'm not explaining as much of it, but I feel like if you just have those things, you can create a great movie, especially when there's nothing that's like actually bad about it. So yeah, no, it's a really great, very overlooked horror movie in my opinion. Strait Jacket is a very interesting movie to me. On one hand, it really commentates on mental health in a very interesting way to me. It shows the psychological effects that the mother has and how she's deeply like regretted like her murdering someone, being her husband, and the trauma she inflicted on her daughter. And I think that is also just very fascinating. And seeing her trying to just want to move on with her life is also sad, because you know that she wants to change, she wants to move on, even if throughout the entire movie you think that she's gonna kill someone, you still almost feel bad for her in a way, because you're like, oh, well, obviously she's killing people, but she clearly doesn't want to be that person. She just wants to live, she just wants to really live a normal life. And then you get to the end of the movie when you find out, oh shit, those murders were from the daughter. And you understand that this isn't a movie about a mentally disturbed mother. It's about the sort of traumatic effects that she specifically emplaced on her daughter and the trauma that she caused her. And her trying to live and to own up to that by the end of the movie is really just not wholesome, but it's comforting in a way. As she sort of starts to understand the deep regret and starts to really fully understand the consequences of the actions that she caused on her daughter. And whether you can say that, obviously she's a bad person or not or whatever, her to sort of feel and sort of understand and not just fully hate and despise her daughter, but sort of understand that she is a product of the mistakes that she made and the act that she committed, and at the end of the movie is able to own up to that. And I think that is, very, very good, and something that I think is really nice to see. However, I mean, a lot of the movie feels like a 50s movie, and not in a good way, not like a 50s charming way, but in a 50s not great way, where some of the acting is very corny. The movie kind of meanders at certain times. It's not bad, it's a solid film, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that's just not great. Mouth of Madness is a movie that I find to be incredibly overrated, as it is considered a cult classic, and it's really not that great. Most of the movie, there's really not a lot going on. We have these two main leads who are very boring in my opinion. We have the guy who's the realist or whatever. I guess kind of almost like an atheist archetype that you kind of see in a lot of these movies, where it's oh, this can't happen, there's a logical, and has his own little logical explanations for everything, right? And that's interesting and all, but I don't really care. He's just a very boring, very standard, very typical character that you see in every other kind of fantasy, sci-fi, horror kind of film where there's something fantastical going on. And then we have our woman lead, who I guess is kind of a love interest, kind of not. They don't really end up together, and then she gets thrown out very quickly in the movie. So it's just what was the point of her being here? Why is she here? I personally just didn't really understand that. I didn't really get why we have to have these very boring and bland characters sort of be talking and setting up everything for an hour of the movie almost. It's 45 minutes. And then we have the movie takes 15 minutes to kind of discover and explain us what the hell's going on. And then the last 30 minutes of the movie are really interesting to me, as we have all these really cool effects, these cool ideas. And the concept is a very interesting concept. I just feel it's not utilized very well. They literally, everything this dude writes comes true in this world, and it just feels so boring. It feels they didn't do enough with this really cool idea that they had. And it's just kind of sad to me. It's kind of disappointing. And the cosmic horror elements on paper, they definitely could work. And I think if they did a little bit more job, a little bit more time in the writing room, trying to really fully execute all of this stuff, I think it could have made a more entertaining and a more interesting movie. But honestly, as much as I thought those last 30 minutes were entertaining, I also just was this movie, the first hour of it wasn't good anyways. So I don't really care as much now. You need to start the movie off good. And that's the thing, is you don't spend an hour of the movie just setting everything up and then giving us 30 pretty entertaining minutes of a 90-minute movie. It's not how you should set up. And obviously that's not Carpenter's intention. His intention is for you to love and adore this movie through the entire runtime, but I didn't. And from the box office standing, it didn't seem like a lot of other people did. Now, to be fair, The Thing also bombed at the box office, and that was a pretty amazing movie. So that's not a good jab. John Carpenter makes movies that I guess have bad marketing and don't have a lot of appeal to other people, which is just really sad and unfortunate that a lot of his other movies that were great weren't very successful. And even this one, which isn't the greatest thing ever, but there was potential, in my opinion, and I feel like a lot of that potential was very much so wasted. It's not bad. I still think it's an above average movie, but it's nothing like amazing, and it's not something I'd recommend to people. Corpse Bride is one of Burton's best movies by a long shot. The stop motion is fantastic. I love the contrast between this very depressing, sad, mundane, like, living world, and then the dead world is just so, like, lively and alive. It's so fascinating to me because it's normally the other way around, but they switch it this way, and I feel like it fits the songs more too, as the songs in the living world are more like gothic, more sort of about despair, more have this like depressing undertone, while the songs that we have down underneath, at least for the most part, are more lively, have more of this upbeat flair. Of course they have their tragedy in their own way, but it's the settings that they give for each of the songs fit each other, which makes sense why they would sort of separate those color tones. And I really do like that. The bride is a really great character. I absolutely love her accepting the fact, that of her past tragedies and her past failed love, and not trying to push it onto anyone else anymore, and just sort of feeling more refined with herself. And then Victor, who is this confused man who just doesn't really know who he truly loves, what he truly loves. And it's nice and wholesome to see him find that, to see him find a person that he genuinely, really likes and, really cares about. And then we even have our villain, who is very demeaning, very horrible, and all the right ways, in my opinion. Now, the only thing that I don't like, this isn't like a criticism or anything, really. This is more just an observation. Are you really telling me you're picking that girl over the absolute baddie? And I know the point is, damn it, she's undead. That doesn't mean she isn't more interesting and better. You know what I mean? Like, she's a way better looking, way interesting. I'm just saying, she's this lady's stale, bro. She's boring. But, whatever, I guess we all have our own taste. So, anyways, this movie's amazing. One of my favorite stop-motion movies in general. And just one of my favorite animated movies in general. And one of my favorite horror/Halloween movies in general. I am a big fan of Evil Dead 2. And after watching all 3 of the other Evil Dead movies, maybe I gotta rewatch 1 again, or maybe I'll rewatch Army of Darkness. But from what I can gather, the only one that I really, really like is the second one, which is kind of disappointing because I heard this one is a lot more consistent than other horror franchises. And while that is kind of true, because there's no absolutely garbage one besides Evil Dead 1, and maybe I gotta rewatch that one. It's been 5 years since I've seen that movie. But my point is that it's a little bit more consistent than other horror franchises. And as it pains me to say that I didn't like it that much and just thought it was a solid movie, because it's really fun. The gore, the effects, it's all very entertaining and has that Evil Dead flair that I love. The visuals are good. It also has a setting that makes sense, as our main character is going through rehab with her friends. So of course it makes sense why they're not going to believe her when she's talking about how she's hallucinating and everything like that. So I think that's also very interesting, but I have a lot of problems with it. And a lot of the problems I have with it are the fact that our main characters are idiots. For their age, they're idiots. If these were teenagers, I could kind of understand, but they are almost 30. They're 25 or something. These are grown-ass adults, and they make the stupidest decisions ever. First of all, there's a shotgun in the cabin. I don't know why you would have that, because, we have someone who is going through heavy withdrawal symptoms. Maybe a shotgun, or is it a double-barrel shotgun? Maybe a double-barrel shotgun isn't the best thing to have in that, that cabin. And then when she starts panicking, freaking out, and they're like, hey, let's take her to hospital, let's use our brains here, the nurse lady is like, well, there's not much else in the treatments we could do that they wouldn't do for her. They still have the equipment to, if something really bad happens, they can, that they can do something to help it, because they would have the equipment to do that. Or what if she harms herself? Then they're at a hospital. Most likely she'll be fine. So maybe don't have her in an abandoned cabin that's really far away. And then because they made that stupid action, then the river starts covering everything up, making it so that they can't leave. So then we're just stuck here because of your dumbass actions. So yeah, the characters are absolute morons, and it sucks because the movie still is quite entertaining beyond that. It's a very entertaining film, but the characters, they're just not good characters. Like I said before, they're idiots. They're also just not very interesting to me. Like, I don't find any of them interesting. And one of the main reasons why I love Evil Dead 2 is because of Ash, because he's just so like flamboyant and just out there, and the slapstick comedy is just so interesting to me that because of that, I just find him just so fascinating. But we don't have a character like that. Even our main girl lead, she's possessed for half the movie, so you don't really care. It's just like besides the fun gore and practical effects and a couple other reasons like the setup and everything, it's just not that great of a movie, and I feel disappointed in saying that, but it's unfortunately the truth. Okay, so I did watch Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and I have nothing to say about this movie. It was kind of fun, it was kind of entertaining, but that's as far as it goes. There's really nothing that this movie adds that's out there. To end it off, we have probably the best horror movie out of any of the ones I had watched this month, Sinister. This is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It is definitely up there, probably in my top 10 at the very least, and either the best or the second best horror movie of the 2010s. It's very close with the Babadook. It's such an amazing movie to me, and I love everything about it. It's just so amazing, so interesting, so well thought out, so well done. It's hard to find a bad thing about it. Ethan Hawke's portrayal, as we see him slowly lose his sanity as a writer, very past his prime, trying to reach that glory that he had with his first major blow up, and just seeing how he just goes through these very desperate ways of him just really wanting to just relive that, to do whatever he can to regain the legacy that he once had at one point. I just think that's so interesting and so fascinating, as we just have this really very interesting, very deep character in a movie that's, you don't see that as much in horror movies. So I really absolutely do appreciate having that sort of idea in there. It's just really well done. And seeing it, the acting he gives, the performance he gives when he's freaking out and he just doesn't know what to do and he's slowly losing his sanity, it's just so phenomenal to me. And the kid actors are really great, especially when the little girl's possessed and everything. That was just amazing. Such a great sequence. I'm so impressed that they were able to get a child actor to act that way. And the wife also is really good and sort of, grounds him in a way that I think is very interesting. As we see his character development, as he starts to realize that his family, his wife, these are his reasons for living. These are his purpose in life. These are the things that he wants to do, and he should do what he can to support them, as he cares about them deeply. He really does. Even if it doesn't seem like it at first, he does care about these people. And he starts to realize that even though this could be the best thing, the biggest break he could possibly ever do, he has to let it go. And the even sadder reality of that is that him letting that go falls to his family's demise, as after he leaves the house is when his whole family dies. And because of his own character development, because he becomes a better person, his family suffers the consequences for that as well as himself. And that is such a tragic way to end it, but such an interesting and unique way, as with horror movies, they normally kind of leave you on a stinger of, could it happen? Did it happen? Did it not? This movie shows you, yes, his whole family died because of his actions. And I think that's just so sad and so tragic. Also, on top of that, it was one of the first horror movies that I've seen in a while that actually creeped me out. That actually freaked me out. There were it wasn't because there was a bunch of jump scares, a bunch of James Wan bullshit. It's because they gave you something that actually was scary. They gave you these little hints, these little moments that just freak you out. Whether it was when he's turning around and there's the image of the guy or whatever, staring at the screen, from the image, and he just moves for a second, and I'm just like, holy shit, what the hell is going on here? And then there's just these other little moments, like I mentioned before, with the daughter watching Ethan Hawke while he's walking through the hallways. That freaked me out. Sorry, by daughter, I don't mean his daughter, I mean the kids. The the kids that were missing. Like when you see them, it's like, oh my god, what the hell is going on here? It's just like stuff like that that makes you question what's going on, and you never get a full answer. And I feel like that's better because it makes the atmosphere more terrifying as little clues and little hints are dropped, slowly making you discover kind of what's going on, but you still don't have a full understanding of everything. And that is the perfect way to make a horror movie, because when you go back to it, you don't know everything still. So you're still scared and terrified of everything that is going on with you because of the mystery. And at the beginning, you're even more terrified when you first watch the movie because you have no idea what's going on at all. So it's a movie that is mystery, unraveled a mystery, unraveled a mystery. And that is what makes it a terrifying, amazing masterpiece. So I thank you guys for watching this very long video. I know I don't really go on this much. I don't really spend this much time talking and just like making this long of a video, but I really wanted to get my full in-depth thoughts of every movie that I watched. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm also planning on branching out more. I'm going to link my TikTok in the description. If it's not in the description, it's on my channel. You can go check it out there. My Instagram is there as well. I'm also going to have a second channel where I do more like gym content, more working out stuff. That will either be linked in the description, or I will have that available for you to click on in my about page. So yeah, no, thank you guys for watching this. I really appreciate you guys giving me all that runtime. And yeah, no, I will be back again to talk about all this stuff either in October, or maybe I'll make a video even newer than that. Maybe I'll rank like a franchise or something.